Howdy folks, Jamboriki here. Last month, I started ranking all of the Disney villain antagonists, to be specific, animated baddies from the House of Mouse's mainline studio and the subdivision, DisneyToon. So, without any further ado, it's time for part 2. Ordu, Orwen, and Orgoch from the Black Cauldron. These three witches are the gatekeepers of the legendary Black Cauldron, but they won't surrender their most prized possession to our heroes so easily. These are pretty annoying characters, sure that's maybe the point, but they hit a meter on their irritating spectrum that's a tad much. They're a trio of immature sisters that shriek and cackle obnoxiously, and squabble over the dumbest of things.
You're not going to eat this one.
This film could have actually done a lot with a family of entitled witch siblings who are dangerously reckless with their magic, but the film just makes them into nuisances.
Love-struck witch! Where is he?
However, there is something to their passion for bargaining. These siblings have a thing for making trades, and their kleptomania is vividly reflected in their messy house. Despite their childishness, these witches take their bargaining very seriously. They not only know what makes a fair trade, but they also try to be double assured that their client is happy before the swap, because they've most likely dealt with many angry customers before.
Remember, with this sword, you could be the greatest of warriors.
While I don't like these villains' personalities, I do enjoy watching them get enthusiastic about making deals, from their love of bargaining as a hobby to their ability to see the upsides of risky deals.
That's the point, don't you see? We'll end up with both the sword and the cauldron.
Matangi from Moana 2. This goddess has trapped our beloved Maui in a giant clam, but it turns out that the demigod was just bait for Moana, and Matangi actually wants to help our heroes defeat her master, Nalo. Matangi is yet another Disney villain that's more interesting in concept than in execution. The issue is, thanks to this bad sequel's awful pacing, Matangi's transition of subservient villain to willing mentor all happens lightning fast. We never get to see Matangi considering betraying Nalo or weighing the consequences of helping Moana. All of that untapped character drama has already happened off screen. She goes from posing as a possible threat to the film's start, and then jumps straight into playing teacher as soon as a student arrives.
I need
Get out of here, break Nalo's curse, find Motufetsu. Here to help.
Don't get me wrong, Matangi has a vibrant personality, a sassy sense of humor.
This was your plan to keep me in a snot cave because you want us to go together?
Well, I certainly did not keep you for the conversation.
An awesome bat-inspired look, and one of the rare good Moana 2 songs, a soulful number that matches the quippy and bubbly villain's personality.
Get lost, can't lose, and lose your way. Get no fun in holding back, babe.
However, there's this compelling story of an enslaved goddess finding the courage to aid the mortals, but Disney skims over all the juicy bits. Maybe Moana 3 will expand on what's missing here? Who knows? But Moana 2 only gives us the tiny crumbs of Matangi's potential, and any future sequels will have a hard time working off of what's been squandered. Buster from Lady and the Tramp 2. This mixed Doberman is the leader of the Junkyard Dogs, the very community that Tramp's runaway son, Scamp, wants to join. Okay, so Buster is certainly a scary dog. I will give you that. He's a fierce and aggressive canine that has to frequently remind his fellow strays that he's the one in power, all while making his grudge against domesticated dogs very clear. Heck, I can imagine kids being kinda scared for Scamp's life whenever he's around the crazed Buster.
'Cause if you were, you'd be kibble.
Oh, and it is pretty creepy how Buster keeps claiming that Angel belongs to him, not just because it shows how possessive he is as a king, but also due to the disturbing age gap between pup and predator.
Baby, I always get my best ideas when you're around. That's why you're my girl.
I'm not your girl.
Sadly, Buster is riddled with the usual cliches of a mediocre Disney sequel's villain. Like, Buster claims that he was Tramp's former student, and felt betrayed when Tramp left the streets for a life with Lady. However, the original film makes no mention of a Buster, and the only student of Tramp's we ever met was Lady. So, Buster's backstory comes off like character development from a bad fanfiction.
After I met your mother, I guess Buster just got jealous.
You ditched me.
I fell in love!
You made your choice.
Something that's made worse by how Tramp and Buster only have one scene together, and Buster is left to channel all these emotions onto Scamp for most of the movie. On top of this, Buster never seems to have an overall clear plan. It's like he's making up his villainy as he goes along. I'm all for an impulsive villain, but Buster's spur-of-the-moment scheming is less of a product of his temper and more of a result of the film's overall aimlessness and creative indecisiveness. I mean, I first thought that Buster's goal was to turn Scamp into his son-like prodigy in a bid to upset Tramp, but that promising revenge plot soon gets abandoned, and Buster just becomes jealous of his own pet project.
Buster!
Not to mention, it is kind of disappointing to see this rather intimidating mixed Doberman eventually being defeated by a puppy's cute trick. He doesn't put up a big fight or let his trademark temper finally explode. He just gets mildly humiliated at best. Namaari, from Raya and the Last Dragon. Long ago, Namaari of the Fang Nation befriended Raya of the Heart Nation, but only so that Namaari could locate a sacred magic gem hidden in Heart, only for said gem to be broken and divided. Thus the evil Droom returned. Years pass, while Raya is teamed up with the Last Dragon, Sisu, to repair the broken gem. Namaari focuses on expanding Fang and stopping Raya. Namaari certainly has an intimidating toughness and breaks many princess cliches by embracing her warrior side. A slick persona that's demonstrated further by her exceptional blade work and ability to switch to bare-fisted martial arts whenever disarmed. However, the film really wants to paint her as a sympathetic villain, revealing her to be an antagonist who actually has affection for dragons and just wants to protect the people. The problem is that actions speak louder than words, and Namaari not only triggered this entire apocalypse, but has also grown up into a tyrant who is focused on conquering.
You heard the general. We're running out of space. We need to expand.
In one scene, she threatens to genocide an entire town. Sure, everyone living there has been turned to stone, but Namaari doesn't know that. Once Namaari shows that she's willing to murder populations, that's when she loses any chance of redeeming herself to me. It doesn't matter how hard Disney tries to emotionally manipulate the audience. I can't feel for a character this cruel. Heck, after killing Sisu, Namaari does express remorse, but she then uses her guilt as a chance to shift part blame onto Raya, which really goes to show how bad Namaari is at taking accountability.
Do whatever you want. But you're as much to blame for Sisu's death as I am.
The film also has the gall to shame Raya for not giving Namaari a second chance, even though Namaari repeatedly betrays Raya in the film. Plus, the movie also frames our heroine as irrationally angry for wanting to take down Namaari, when Raya has every right to revolt against a genocidal tyrant.
She cannot see us. Raya's blinded by her own rage.
Namaari never ever earns her right to be trusted, yet Raya puts the fate of the world in her hands in the end, with everyone then following suit, not because they now have faith in our villain, but because they trust Raya, who now only trusts Namaari to help drill in the film's awful and toxic message of, you have to give the benefit of the doubt to everyone, no matter how much they've hurt you, which is a big yikes. King Magnifico, from Wish. This royal sorcerer has founded the Kingdom of Roses, where folks live in peace and harmony. However, when young Asher discovers that Magnifico isn't going to grant every citizen's wish with his magic, she plans to steal His Highness's wish collection. I'll admit that I didn't give the best analysis of Magnifico in my ranking of animated films of 2023, but after rewatching Wish for this video, you know what? I actually think that he's way more worse than I remember. Sure, he's one of the more charismatic bad Disney villains, and voice actor Chris Pine is clearly having lots of fun behind the microphone.
The perfect nanny for your horrible children. Popping this one!
However, this is such a misfire of a character in so many ways. I mean, it's hard to even call Magnifico a villain. He's a tad vain and a wee bit smug.
You're right. I am a handsome king.
But evil? No, not really. He's built a utopia that grants free housing and magical protection. Plus, his own past trauma motivates him to put public safety first as a king. Hence why he becomes so concerned when an unknown person starts performing unregulated magic in the kingdom. Yet, the movie desperately tries to frame him as the bad guy, just because he's strict about which wishes he grants. But 1. Rose's citizens are willingly handing their wishes to Magnifico without force, all while knowing full well that the catch will be that they will forget their wish. Plus, he even announced that he would only grant wishes to those who he deemed worthy, so painting him as this misleading liar is just plain wrong. 2. Once the wishes have been freely given to Magnifico, they are technically in his hands, and he now has a responsibility to safety check them as king. I mean, these are vague wishes made out of powerful magic, so of course an experienced sorcerer who has studied all of the magic arts is the most qualified person to responsibly regulate these orbs. Not all wishes are going to be wholesome or safe, and it's quite naive to assume that everyone in Roses has good intentions or can never go down a dark path. 3. Yes, Magnifico refuses to return any wishes he rejects, but if he's already got a bad feeling about a wish, then wouldn't it be irresponsible of him to hand it back willy-nilly? It's so weird how hard Disney tried to convince us that this sensible guy is some kind of twisted tyrant. Wish doesn't even let Magnifico have a compelling downfall as a well-intentioned king. Instead, he becomes consumed by a forbidden spellbook and instantly goes full rogue wizard, all while Disney conveniently abandons all of Magnifico's sympathetic qualities and just turns him into one of their generic evil sorcerers.
Wishes really do come true.
You don't deserve Star!
I told you. I decide.
Oh, and one more thing. Magnifico also has the worst Disney villain song to date. You see, his musical number is supposed to be about his rising ego and temptations towards darkness. But Disney strangely decided to go with a cheesy and unfitting bubbly pop sound. This song is full of brooding lighting and even ends with Magnifico's menacing face staring creepily at us. Yet our villain sounds like he's singing a Beach Boys tune.
And this is the thanks act.
There's nothing wrong with an upbeat or comedic villain song, but such a tone and style was woefully inappropriate for this scene's intent.
There's a traitor in this town and still I remain unbent.
The Ringmaster from Dumbo. When Mrs. Jumbo the elephant comes to her son Dumbo's defense, she's cruelly punished by the circus leader. This obnoxious and loud grifter is a perfect reflection of an outdated and bygone era of American entertainment, a money-hungry showman who puts spectacle and ego before the very safety of his entrapped animal acts.
Each one winning that windbag! Why doesn't he come to the point?
He cares so little for his wildlife performers that he fails to look into why Mrs. Jumbo attacked one of his guests. Instead, he impulsively brands her as mad and ends up letting a customer get away with abusing his elephant. It's bad enough that the Ringmaster has taken Dumbo's mother away from him, but he also rubs salt in the wound by turning the grieving baby elephant into a laughingstock, as Dumbo becomes a child clown for audiences to ridicule and taunt as they please. Luckily, Dumbo gets to not only prove that he can do more as a circus act, but also has a chance to humiliate his abuser. Sure, the Ringmaster only frees and pampers Mrs. Jumbo because Dumbo has become his moneymaker, but it's maybe unfair to expect a film made in the 1940s to revolutionize animal rights overnight. Brom from The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Brom is the local prankster of Sleepy Hollow, who becomes the romantic rival of Ichabod Crane in their pursuit of the beautiful Katrina Van Tassel. At first, Brom only picks on Ichabod because he's the unusual newcomer and is hogging all the ladies' attention. But once Ichabod starts humiliating Brom, oh boy, that's when our villain really loses his patience. Despite being known as the town hero, Brom has quite the scary temper and will use this aggression to claim his territory. Oh, and he can also be very cruel to any women that he doesn't find attractive. He's also quite the immature fella too, like at the Autumn Ball, where he sulks like a petty child just because he's not the one dancing with Katrina, and handles said envy by turning up the danger dial as a prankster. However, I have to say that Brom's shining scene is when he gets to hype up the Headless Horseman, in a bit to tap into Ichabod's weakness of superstition. This moody and haunting villain song works as the perfect taunt against Ichabod, and also excels as cinematic foreshadowing for the movie's final boss. Brom really knows how to build an atmosphere as a storyteller, and it's fantastic.
He'll be down in the hollow there. Keep your head, look out, beware.
Unfortunately, this film wants to have its cake and eat it too, because it wishes for Brom to be our main antagonist and the lesser of two evils, when really, he's just as bad as Ichabod. Sure, Brom doesn't indicate that he's after Katrina for her money, which is the main reason why Ichabod wants her, but the film never actually clarifies that Brom has sincere feelings for Katrina. To me, it seems to be purely superficial attraction and a desire for masculine dominance. Plus, while Brom gets his fair share of bullying from the smug Ichabod, let's not act like Brom isn't just as much of a bully back. Heck, Brom is arguably the more violent one of the two, so no, I can't agree when people say that Brom is a morally grey villain or a good guy compared to Ichabod. He's just a dated 1940s idea of masculine heroism that happens to be the film's antagonist. Despite all of these red flags, Brom actually gets the girl that he wanted in the end. Sure, she's a bit of a sociopath herself, but this still means that the movie ends with a bully winning the day, which isn't exactly the best lesson for kids. If I'm honest, I think that Disney did the same character 10 times better with Gaston. Vidya from Tinkerbell. Vidya is the local bully of Pixie Hollow, who really has it in for our heroine, Tinkerbell. It's blatantly obvious that Vidya despised Tinkerbell from her very birth, a grudge that's fueled by how Tink makes a special impression on day one.
Never seen one glow that much before, even for Vidya. You know, I do believe you're right.
No matter how friendly Tinkerbell is, Vidya always responds with a defensive arrogance or snobby judgment.
I work up in the sky, and you work down in a ditch. Hey.
Vidya resents our heroine out of an immature jealousy, and an insecure fear of feeling less than Tink. Thus, a competitive rivalry begins, one that Tink clearly never even wanted.
You'll prove it, huh?
Yes, I will.
Well, I, for one, am looking forward to that.
Yeah, Vidya is mainly relegated to being the mean girl trope for a chunk of the movie, but this high school style bullying soon turns into genuine malice, as Vid sneakily pretends to help Tink and frame our heroine in a disaster that causes destruction. I have to admit, Vidya is a pretty cunning fairy for taking advantage of Tink's desperation and picking her a task that was bound to end in disaster for Miss Bell.
There isn't a garden fairy alive who can control those weeds.
At the end of the day, Vidya's envy is both the root of her villainy, but also her very weakness as an antagonist to Tink. Hence why she ends up shooting her own foot in the end.
Well, I tried to help you. Maybe I should have told you to capture the hawk instead of the thistles.
If I'm honest though, I find Vidya to be less compelling as a dizzy baddie, and a lot more engaging as a petty girl who develops into one of Tink's friends. She's not bad as a villain, but her tier of evil is rather tame and vanilla compared to darker Disney rogues. And it's just more interesting watching her grow into her own person outside the mean girl trope.
Discovery of the century.
Video? Get out of the way!
Lumpjaw from Fun and Fancy Free, when this wild and ferocious bear mistakes young Lula Bell's accidental slap for a gesture of love, he refuses to let the poor girl go, and so it's up to Bongo the Cup to save his new friend. Lumpjaw is very much like Buster in many ways, a sensitive-tempered brute who is also creepily after a character half his age. However, unlike Buster, Lumpjaw's impulsiveness comes more naturally. This villain's spontaneity doesn't stem from an aimless script, but from the character's vividly established feral behavior and obvious missing brain cells.
Just a moment.
Rewatching this movie, I honestly didn't remember Lumpjaw being this threatening. Disney really didn't hold back on him, and went all out on making him stand out from all the other bears, with his looming size, sharp slobbering jaws, and bassy roar. Disney also goes nuts with Lumpjaw's strength as a bear, from introducing him as being strong enough to smash down trees, to showing how he can throw about Bongo like he's a ragdoll. The only thing that bothers me is that even though Lumpjaw's brawn is hyped up to this degree, Bongo somehow later turns into Popeye and can now randomly outmatch his bully. I get that maybe Bongo's strength is fueled by love, and that Lumpjaw's weakness is his lack of wit, but I would have appreciated a training montage to justify this abrupt change of power dynamic. Ripslinger from Planes. After this champion racing plane develops a personal beef with Dusty, a crop duster from the countryside, he becomes determined to retain his success. Yeah, this guy is basically Chick Hicks with wings, a cocky, winning obsessed racer with a green paint job. However, I actually think that Ripslinger is the superior villain. While Chick mainly just acts like a jerk and copies lightning, Rip is an actual active villain that puts strategy into thwarting our hero. For example, he bribes a fellow racer into being a femme fatale for him. Sure, the honey trap is maybe a cliche villain tactic, but it's a good trope for demonstrating a baddie's eye for undercover strategy.
I wanted to compliment you on your success, Dusty. You're doing very well for your first race.
Oh, that means a lot coming from you.
Then, in the final race, Ripslinger cleverly corners Dusty into a spot where television cameras can't see anything, so that he can attack our hero without risking ruining his celebrity reputation.
Looks like you've run out of airspace, crop hopper.
There's also this snobby classism to Ripslinger's rivalry against Dusty, all because the villain can't handle the idea of being outraced by a crop duster. Rip's jabs at Dusty aren't just racing banter, they're acid-tongue insults that come with a sting of prejudice.
Bolting on a few new parts doesn't change who you are. I can still smell the farm on you.
Rip used to be highly respected as a racer, but the idea of an everyman farmer joining his roster scares him so much that he's become an elitist who wants racing to be a Rich Plains club, so we're basically watching a champion's downfall in real time.
Senor Dusty has 10 times the engine you do.
And 10 times the integrity.
This racer's vanity as a successful plane is actually the very source of his own defeat. He spent so much time trying to get rid of his talented working class competition that he ends up missing his very own Achilles heel.
He's done it! He's done it! Drop
Cad Spinner from Plains Fire and Rescue. Cad is the proud superintendent of a park hotel who is very excited to reopen his lodge to wealthy customers. But Cad's enthusiasm is interrupted when a fire heads its way towards his hotel. Mr. Spinner may be a cartoon god, but I actually see him as a very on-base parody of the hospitality industry's worst higher-ups. I've seen so many disaster documentaries that feature a self-absorbed businessman like Cad, the smug jerk who can be blamed for failing public safety, yet refuses to take any accountability. He's a shallow and profit-focused boss that demeans his staff.
Yes, I am. Panuski.
No, sir, Pulaski.
Papuski.
Pulaski.
Patutsi.
Pulaski.
All while blowing smoke up the butts of celebrity guests.
Hey, Boat Reynolds! Boat, love you invest in a boathouse in Texas.
To Cad, you only have value if you're a high-paying client, or can be used as a promotional stunt.
Tomorrow night, the Lodge. Grand reopening party. You're invited. And I'm thinking high-speed flyover. What are you thinking?
Then, once said fire happens, Cad shows his true colors, as he horrifyingly refuses to evacuate his endangered customers. Yes, this twisted man is willing to trap people inside his hotel just to stubbornly protect his pride as its owner. It's genuinely psychotic behavior.
To be safe, you gotta get everyone out.
I've been working on this lodge for 5 years. I'm not going to evacuate now.
Cad is frustrating enough already, but he also has this disrespectful attitude towards the hard-working local fire department. Yep, he has the cheek to sneer at the very service that protects his hotel's environment. Yeesh.
We're not getting enough water on the lodge. Reroute the main water line to the roof sprinklers.
Oh, no. The firefighters need that water to make retardant.
How do you know that?
I'm the concierge.
Cad is the kind of villain that kids can have a blast booing at from their sofa, while adults can appreciate him as a sharp jab towards the hotel industry's dark side. Zeus from Fantasia. The beginning of the Fantasia segment, the Pastoral Symphony, centers on a utopian world where creatures live in peace, and the drunk Bacchus leads earthly festivities, only for Zeus himself to make a theatrical entrance as the god of thunder. Yes, long before Disney depicted the king of gods as a loving father and faithful husband, the House of Mouse portrayed Zeusi as a legit villain, which is actually much more accurate to real Greek and Roman mythology. He's a spiteful and malicious god who takes pleasure in ruining the peace with a powerful storm, all while he relishes in abusing his trademark attack, the Thunderbolt, a choice of weapon that seems endless thanks to the blacksmith talents of Vulcan. We've just spent the first half of this short being endeared by these innocent creatures, and now we have to watch the poor things suffer in distress? All while Zeus acts like it's one big game and a chance to flex his command. Heck, even Zeus's very own son, Bacchus, is intimidated by the god of thunder. Yes, this diva has interrupted his son's jovial party, just so that he can make himself into the center of attention and punish the god of wine for being a drunk party animal. Now sure, Zeus faces no comeuppances or defeat after playing villain, but I think that's the point. No matter how beautiful and blissful the world is most of the time, nature can also be destructive and unforgiving. It's a part of daily life that we have to accept, while we try our best to survive each storm. Willy the Giant from Fun and Fancy Free. This selfish giant has stolen a magic harp from the Valley of Happiness, leaving struggling peasants Mickey, Donald and Goofy to rescue said harp. The dumb antagonist is a difficult type of villain to pull off, because their clumsiness or stupidity can possibly hinder their villainous potential. However, I think that Willy is this trope done brilliantly well. Fun and Fancy Free doesn't just paint Willy as a stupid giant and then leave it at that. The Big Oaf's painfully low IQ is greatly compensated for by many positives. For example, there's an endearing charm to his childlike train of thought, and we end up with a weirdly adorable baddie because of it.
With green gravy.
On top of this, Willy's list of skills is long enough to make up for his drawbacks. I mean, this is still a scary fairy tale monster who can effectively sniff out his prey.
Oh, I hope he doesn't find him. Hey, Giant, you're getting warm.
And even demonstrate a surprising talent for the athletic chase. Although, it's his trademark superpower of transformation that makes this giant truly special, a magic gift that's only limited by Willy's own imagination, so I think the story should have used his power a bit more. Oh yeah, sure, but the idea of a shape-shifting giant is still incredibly unique. I also wouldn't say that Willy's skull is completely empty, because there is a little sense of wit upstairs, and he deserves credit for sometimes using it. Whether he's working out Mickey's attempt at reverse psychology,
Hey, what is this? You think you fool, Willy?
or making sure that his key is kept high from the mouse's range. While I do think that Willie's qualities go underexplored in a short film double bill, I will say that Willie steals the spotlight in the mediocre and messy fun and fancy-free. Ronno, from the Bambi movies. Young Ronno was quite the bully to little Bambi. Sure, he was just a kid himself, and could be just as afraid as any of a child his age. But he still showed the signs of a villain in the making, from being creepily controlling a feline, to making Bambi feel even worse about his childhood traumas, to lacking any empathy for his fellow animals.
What was that? Probably just some poor dumb animal caught in a trap.
Not to mention, he showed a fierce aggression in his first ever fight against Bambi, and a very short temper when it came to losing. I think what I find the most interesting about Junior Ronno though, is that he didn't seem to have a dad, and he maybe saw the Great Prince as a father figure. Hence why the brat was so jealous of Bambi, the prince's real son. Once Ronno grows up, we see that all of his untreated rage issues have disturbingly shaped him into an unfeeling and possessive deer. Plus, his talent for fighting has stayed with him, except now he's a fearless and stronger buck. The fight itself is both a visually striking use of silhouettes and a chance for the grief-stricken Bambi to show that he's now old enough to protect a loved one. While he can never bring back his mother, he can become Feline's protector. Morgana, from The Little Mermaid 2. Morgana is the nasty and vicious sister of Ursula, who, in a bid to outdo her sister, tries to coerce Ariel's daughter Melody into stealing her granddad's trident. The trouble with this villain is that she spends a majority of the film whining and whinging about her sister complex, all while she fails to carve out an identity of her very own. Morgana isn't her own person or a fresh new baddie, she's the sequel's desperate attempt at nostalgia bait.
Morgana, why can't you be more like your sister, Ursula?
Although, I wouldn't have said that she's a flop as a villain, because there's much to compliment. Morgana's extreme desire to outdo her sister does actually lead to the Sea Witch going the extra mile to improve on her siblings' mistakes. Even the best of the best Disney baddies have made slip-ups, and sequel villains have the great opportunity to learn from these blemishes. Instead of relying on a magic deal with a reverse clause, Morgana focuses on emotional manipulation. Melody is at an age where she finds it easy to trust grown-ups, and Morgana takes advantage of this innocence to turn the girl against her very own family, all by 100% committing to a believable auntie persona and using her own family woes to seem relatable to Melody.
You're not the only one with a mother who doesn't understand you. Believe me.
Morgana also takes clever measures in the finale too, like she cruelly traps Melody in an ice cave while she slowly returns to being human. And she obliterates Eric's sea ship, the very same weapon that defeated her sister. I'm not saying that Morgana is superior to Ursula, far from it. I just think that she deserves credit for using her sister's villain career's ups and downs as the blueprint for a 2.0 version of Ursula's scheme. The Headless Horseman, from the adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. This film is exceptionally good at building up the mythology of our villain. You see, after Brom goes ham on hyping up the Horseman's menace, the film relies on a cold, unnerving atmosphere to weave Sleepy Hollow's local legend into a believable possibility. At the same time, Ichabod's visible anxiety and fear fantastically adds to this daunting sense of threat, all by vividly exaggerating the headmaster's heart-pounding panic. Heck, it's Ichabod's raw dread that keeps us on our toes before the horseman has even arrived. Once the horseman does appear, all hell breaks loose, and the myth becomes a striking reality. A caped villain that swings his blade with a relentless fury as he rides a devilish horse at breakneck speed and cackles like a deranged maniac. All while Disney uses nightmarish lighting and demonic colours to complement our baddie's ghostly presence. Sure, this horseman is headless, but even that feeds into the horror, because his very being is left to our imagination, and even Ichabod himself is haunted by that ambiguity. Even though Brom informed us that you can escape the horseman by reaching a bridge, that detail becomes null and void for Ichabod, which just goes to show that legends can become a mix of fact and fiction as they get passed down. Creepily, Ichabod's eventual fate is obscured by cryptic vagueness. Yes, the narrator pitches some rumours for what might have happened to him, but gossip is no comfort when we've seen the Horsemen in action ourselves. Well, those are all the villains that I have time for in part 2, but tune in next month for part 3. I've been Jamboriki, cheerio folks.